Thank you for joining us for another Latino Coalition webinar. I'm your host, Danny Vargas, National DC Director for the Latino Coalition, and today will be our third and final webinar in our marketing series. And today's topic will be an elevator pitch and public speaking. Don't forget to watch our other webinars and our podcast series, and stay tuned for upcoming events like our Latino Prosperity Summit in October in Miami. So without further ado, let's get started. In this series, I not only am National Director at Latino Coalition, I also am a business owner. I own a marketing and public relations firm called Varcom Solutions. And again, today we'll be talking about elevator pitch and effective presentations. Again, Varcom is an award-winning full-service marketing, PR, and strategic communications firm. We've been in the DC area since 2004. We are Latino-owned and serve as a stable, veteran-owned small business, and we've served national, international, corporate, nonprofit, small businesses, and federal government agencies. We've had a solid reputation in the community for quite a long time. In terms of engagement in the media, it's self-evident, as you can see here. We've had everything from national media to print and so much more, being able to engage state, local, federal policymakers at every level, engagement in the community and a lot of organizations, and have had leadership roles and discussions around diversity, equity, inclusion, and so much more. And this is a list of the services that we provide, everything from marketing communications to customer and community engagement and consulting services. These are the types of services that our clients find valuable. And our clients range everything from corporate clients to federal government agencies to business and community groups and nonprofits and so much more. But today we'll be talking about public speaking and effective presentations. We've got a lot to cover in your elevator pitch and so much more. So we're going to run through this quickly. If you think of any questions at the end, you'll have my email address and a way to get a hold of me telephonically as well. So if you think of those questions, please don't hesitate to let us know, because we're going to go through a lot of information fairly quickly. So hold on to your seats. So what is an elevator pitch or an elevator speech, whatever you want to call it? It's a short description of who you are, what you do. You want to be able to get your point across in 30 to 60 seconds. The reason they call it an elevator pitch is usually it's the time it takes you to in an elevator go from the first floor to maybe the fifth floor. So you've only got so much time to be able to get your point across. So it's really important to be able to be succinct and concise, but effective in what you do in terms of getting that point across. It's a tool, for example, that's used by job seekers, as well as people that are looking to sell their products and services. It gives the audience, or whoever is with you in that elevator, or the person that you're interacting with at a networking event, the who, the what, and the why in about a minute or less. So make sure that you provide enough information, though, so that at the end of it, and when the other person is walking away from you, you don't want them to say, yes, so what? You know, they don't, right? So you want to be able to get that point across effectively. You know, the part of it comes from the fact that much of business, as well as with jobs, it comes from who you know, and it comes from that recommendation. It comes from being able to have that personal connection. So you want to be able to capitalize as much as you possibly can in that first minute or two when you meet someone. So whether it's a job search or a sales process, you want to be able to tell them important information right away and as memorable as possible. You want to be able to be persuasive as well. And within that little 1 minute, 30 to 60 seconds, add a proof point, add a detail that you can, if possible, to be able to bolster what it is that you're trying to say. So here's some basic things you want to consider. You want to be able to tell them who you are, what you offer, what problem you solve, for example, what contributions you're able to make to them. Always do it from their point of view. And then hopefully there should be some kind of a call to action at the end. And again, that from their point of view is that you attitude. It's not about me, it's about you. So what I say, I'm gonna be doing it from the perspective of understand what the benefit is to you as the listener of what I'm trying to say. What benefit can I bring to you? Why should you do business with me and or hire me, for example? Um, get to know yourself, understand what your key strengths are. Maybe identify an adjective or two that describes you and what your company offers. A statement about your company and the industry and that you represent. One of the things you may want to consider is an interesting opening, a way to be able to something that's punchy, something that's catchy, something that catches their attention. Make sure that you have sufficient passion or energy in what you're trying to say so that it's not just boring or people don't believe that you're saying something that you believe in because you don't have enough passion or energy behind it. And again, I'm going to keep saying that it's got to be fairly short. You've got that 1 minute to be able to deliver your pitch. If you don't take too long, if you can identify a way to be able to engage and connect with the listeners' pain points or what their priorities are, that could also be interesting. So that initial opening line, that hook that we talked about, it should be something, if you can come up with something that should grab their attention, set the stage for what you're about to say, and it should flow nicely, right? So you may want to say, I don't know, like my company is able to help resolve the energy crisis. Really? Wow. Well, tell me more. I want to learn more about this. So it might be a question, have you ever had your cell phone fail inside a building? Well, my company has a way to be able to resolve that. You may want to have a brief personal story that you incorporate into that. So we're going to look at a couple of examples later, but it's all about being able to craft something that's interesting, that captures their attention, gets your point across, and keeps them keeps you top of mind after the conversation. So I'm going to give you an example, right? So in the one on the left, hi, my name is Pat Smith. I make dreams come true. And the person listening to that says, really? Yeah. How do you do that? And says, well, I'm a wedding planner. I plan dream weddings for couples. I've been working for myself, but I'd like to get into one of those big resorts and host weddings. I'd appreciate an introduction to your VP of catering, Mr. Jones. Right. So that was very succinct. There was a hook. There was an opening line that was really interesting and engaged the listener. And it got the point across as to what makes them special, unique, and different, and what the call to action is. Introduce me to your VP of catering, Mr. Jones. Right. Very short, but a lot of content in that one statement. The other example on the right, let's go through the scenario. Hi, my name is Sam Watson. I'm responsible for this country's future. Really? This I've got to hear. How do you know you're responsible for this country's future? Well, I'm a teacher. I love shaping the minds of the next generation, but I'm also interested in getting into corporate training. Can we meet next week to discuss how I can help your firm? Right. So again, there was a catchy opening line. They were able to describe what made them unique and special, and there was that call to action. But it made it interesting for the listener as well, because that listener maybe was the head of training for the corporation. So these are just examples that you may want to try. So take some time to put it together, test it with your friends, test it in front of a mirror, see how it works, because ultimately, when you do those networking events, when you get on an elevator, when you are interacting with people for the first time, that you want to be able to capture their attention, this is a great way to be able to have that elevator pitch that really gets your point across and sets you apart. So that's the elevator pitch. Next, we're going to talk about effective presentations. Now, there's going to be a lot of information here, so I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. But a lot of the content here really is about if you have to give a speech, if you have to do a training presentation, if you have to even do a sales presentation to a prospective client, these are the types of things that you may want to take into account when doing that presentation, right? So the reality is that it may not be fair, but people will judge you and judge your company and judge your ideas based on the way you communicate. So successful presentations do require some work on your part. You've got to plan and prepare, and we'll look at that, but it's not an overwhelming amount of work. to make it successful. If you are asked to speak as an expert, you should do it well, because if you don't do it well, you won't be asked to do it again. So you've got to make sure that you put in the time and effort to make sure that it goes off well. Successful presentation, on the other hand, it will add to your credibility. You can use it for public relations. You can use it to establish yourself in the future. So take advantage of those opportunities to speak, because it can increase your exposure. And the good news is that you don't have to be a natural, born public speaker. There are tips that you can use and skills that you can learn to make you successful. So here are the basic elements of an effective presentation. We're going to talk about planning. We're going to talk about preparing. We're going to talk about rehearsing and practicing, and then the performance itself, because ultimately it really is a performance. And then at the end, once you're done with it, you want to be able to evaluate and see how you did post the presentation, right? So all these are the elements that you do need to take into account. And even before that, you have to understand that fear of public speaking is probably a fear that more people have than even dying. So it's normal to be afraid. It's normal to be nervous. So understand that going in, but it actually can help you. It can help you stay focused. But you do need to be aware of it, and you need to be able to control it. And the best way to be able to overcome it, or at least deal with it, is to practice, practice, practice. Make sure that you've got it down pat, or at least you're comfortable with it, because the old saying is that competence breeds confidence. What I suggest is that as you prepare and you practice, the better you will get at it. The more public speaking you do, the more comfortable you will be with it. So that rehearsing really is important. I usually could just get that first sentence or two, that first paragraph, get it down solid. And once you do that, the rest of it will flow. But it's that initial, those first few seconds, if you can get that out of the way, then you should be okay. I talk about relaxation techniques before you actually stand up and do your presentation or your speech or whatever it is. Relax a little bit. Maybe let yourself unwind a little bit. Squeeze your hands into a fist for a few seconds and then let it go. That's a relaxation technique. So these are the things that you can do. So instead of thinking about how bad it could be, turn the thinking and think about how good it could possibly be. Use positive affirmation. Have that positive attitude. Things are going to work out fine. The audience wants you to succeed. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to go great. Use that positive attitude going. Okay. In terms of the planning, you always have to think about what the purpose of the presentation is, right? So here are the 5 basic categories of purpose of a presentation. It could be to motivate. It could be to inform, to educate. It could be to persuade, have someone change their minds, or to sell a proposal to someone. It could be just to entertain, or it could be just to promote a discussion with the group, right? So all of these different purposes are valid, but you do need to take that into account when planning your presentation. The other thing to take into account when planning the presentation is to understand your audience. How many people will there be? What's the composition of it? It's a diverse, what's the cultural aspects of it that might influence language, etc. What is the audience expecting to get out of the presentation? What do they know about me? What's their attitude towards me as a presenter, or my company, for example, or the topic that I'm going to be talking about? How much do the audience know about the subject or not know about it? And then once finally the environment of it is going to be formal, informal. Is it people that you know? For example, all these things are taken into account when planning for the presentation. Now, you also have to think about what style of delivery you will be. Each one of these 4 styles is valid depending on circumstances. What you will probably see more often than not is extemporaneous, right? So what extemporaneous means is that you do have some notes, and you might have bullet points and so forth, but it's not reading verbatim from a script, right? And it's also, which is reading, and it's also not impromptu where you just spur of the moment, just talking off the cuff. So extemporaneous allows you to prepare. You've got some notes, you've got an outline, you've got bullet points, for example, and that's usually what you will see. Memorizing, you'll see less of because that's difficult, number one. And number two, it can come across as kind of robotic. So you probably want to avoid memorizing. But the first three are the ones you'll see most often, and more likely it's going to be extemporaneous. And then in terms of organizing your presentation, like with anything else, like with any essay that you've written, there's going to be an introduction, there's going to be a body, there's going to be a conclusion. In the military, when they would teach us about presenting in public, they would tell us to always think about this. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them, right? So there's an introduction, sets the tone, grab their attention, provide the outline of what you're going to be speaking about, and then get into the body of the presentation, all of the details and the points that you're going to be presenting. And then at the end, when you're done, wrap it up and leave them with a good feeling as well. Now, so we've done the planning and the preparing. Now let's rehearse the practice. Familiarize yourself with the room, familiarize yourself with the equipment and the visual aids if you're going to use any. And practice walking around and being natural. Look for flaws or gaps in your presentation outline as well. Make sure you time it as well. When you are practicing it, have your stopwatch on your phone or something else to be able to provide you a timing so that you know if you've got 5 minutes to speak, you don't want to be up there for 10. If you've got 10 minutes to speak, you don't want to get up there and just speak for 2 minutes because that's a wasted opportunity. And then practice maintaining eye contact with people. That's really important. The other good thing to remember is that effective presenters are made and not born. What that means is if you're not a natural public speaker, you don't have to worry about that because there are tips that we are looking at to be able to make you more effective, right? So it does require doing several things well, but you can do it. It can be accomplished. And using some of these techniques effectively will make you a better presenter. And what's the goal of your presentation is to deliver it so that the audience understands, accepts what you are able to share with them, and remembers what you say, and ultimately that you come across well. And as you do that, as you're actually presenting to the audience, when you're performing, try to be confident, try to make contact, use natural gestures and movements, be clear with your voice, interact with the audience as much as allowable, provide feedback, ask for questions and so forth. If you've got audiovisual equipment, make sure that it's working and it's working well. Don't try not to make too many mistakes with the equipment, for example, that can also be distracting. And here are some basic principles about powerful presentations. Don't overwhelm your audience, right? Don't give them more than what they can handle. Don't give them more than what they're expecting. So provide them what you want to be able to get across to them, but make sure that you're not overwhelming them. Number two, people really do have a short attention span. So and retention span as well. So try to make sure that you are pithy, that you're concise wherever possible, and providing that information in a way that they can digest it. Number three, be a presenter, not a public speaker. You're not a politician, right? You're not going to get up there and be fire and brimstone and trying to bring down the house with a powerful political speech. That's not the purpose of it. Your purpose really is to persuade and to provide the information that you want to get across to them. And make sure that they have a good image of you, that you come across as authentic, as credible, as likable. And then finally, be interesting, be meaningful, be memorable, and sort of have it be an active interaction with your audience. Here are some characteristics of a powerful presenter, the types of person that does well and does effectively as a presenter. Be enthusiastic, organize your information in a logical way. Focus on your audience as opposed to yourself. You know, it's about them at the end of the day. Be flexible, use humor where appropriate, use body language so that you come across as normal, natural, as opposed to stiff and wooden. Vary the way you use your voice, you know, tone, intonation, etc. Use appropriate vocabulary. I'm not just talking about dirty words, but vocabulary that your audience will understand. So if uh, you're used to using a lot of technical jargon and they may not understand that jargon, don't use it. You know, just use the type of speech and words that they're able to understand. And then finally, focus on the purpose at hand. Here's a picture of myself with the launch of the Latino Museum Commission in front of the United States Capitol as we were presenting the purpose of the commission, which was to create a new Smithsonian American Latino Museum. We talked about using your voice a little bit. Here are some things that I want you to keep in mind in terms of effective delivery, right? So in terms of your voice, pitch, pace, volume, resonance, pausing, all of these things in terms of your vocal image are things that you should take into account. In terms of your visual image, eye contact with the audience is super important. I want you to take that into account. Your posture really does get across confidence as well. So make sure you are using good posture, standing up straight. Make sure you dress well for the occasion, right? So if it's a formal occasion, dress well. If it's more informal, at least dress appropriately. Use gestures in a natural way, right? Head movement, so being able to look at the audience and not just be stiff and pointing in one direction. Your facial expressions, make sure that you're natural and comfortable in the way that you're speaking. And then final, verbal image, the pronunciation and usage of vocabulary and emphasis and so forth. All of those things in terms of not how you speak, but how you pronounce the words are things that audiences will take into account as well. Your voice and the way you use words and how you pause and how you able to emphasize different words really does change the way that it comes across. So we'll look at Julius Caesar from Shakespeare. It's different to say, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not praise him. That doesn't provide a whole lot of context to the audience. But if you say, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not praise him, right? It's a very different approach to it. So you use your voice, you use pauses where appropriate. The pitch changes. Make sure you take careful attention to vowels and consonants so that they're pronounced well. Speak relatively slowly because I think that's an issue that I have in the past. I speak too quickly. I'm originally from New York, so I speak quickly. So I have to be very mindful of my pace. So I have to slow down. And then ultimately remember the I Have a Dream speech from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was just such an incredible speaker that go back and watch that video and see how he was able to use all of these things that we're talking about, voice and pitch and pause and intonation and so forth. So that's a great example. Lastly, we're going to just emphasize again the non-verbal, the visual skills. Up to 90% of the way we communicate is non-verbal. So take that into account when we're presenting. Use those non-verbal skills and it will have a huge impact on the audience. We talked a lot about this. So be engaging, eye contact, smile, use natural gestures, watch the audience for feedback, right? So that you can adjust your presentation in real time. And then if there are questions, handle them politely, engage and try to use humor, but stay within your time limits because the organizers of any event don't like it when speakers use too much time and go over their time limit. And then finally, the evaluation, the post-event, post-mortem, if you will. This is really helpful because it allows you to get feedback from the audience. Maybe you had a friend in the audience who was able to come up to you afterwards and tell you what went well and what didn't work well, maybe about your appearance or the content or the way you delivered the presentation, and any feedback that you get from the audience. So any suggestions that the audience or your friends that might be in the audience can provide will be super helpful. Okay, so we looked at the elevator pitch, we looked at effective presentations, you learned how to plan for your presentation, staying on purpose, keeping the audience in mind, you learn how to prepare your presentation, you learn how to practice, rehearse, get that first couple sentences, that first paragraph down pat. We talked about how to perform effectively so that your presentation is well received and memorable. And we talked about how to evaluate it afterwards so that you can learn from each presentation. And with that, we're going to bring this to a close. If you've got any questions for me, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email is here. My phone number is here. We'd love to be able to hear from you. And I hope you've gotten some good information from not only this webinar, but also our other two webinars in this marketing series. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks again very much.